If you've ever sat down at a chessboard, looked at all those pieces, and just felt this wave of anxiety about what on earth to do first, well, you are definitely not alone. Chess openings can feel like this huge, intimidating ocean of theory. But today, we're going to change that. We're going to demystify them. Right, let's just get straight to it, because this is the one question every single player asks. I mean, from your very first game all the way up to the World Championship, everyone is looking for that perfect, unbeatable first few moves. And it's no surprise we're all so obsessed with this question. Just look at this number. According to the Oxford Companion to Chess, there are at least 1,327 officially named openings and variations. Yeah, trying to memorize all of those is not only impossible, it's just not going to be any fun. But what if I told you that this whole quest for the single best opening is completely misguided? That the real answer is way more interesting and honestly a lot more powerful than just memorizing a list of moves. Okay, so before we can even begin to talk about picking an opening, we have to understand what an opening is actually trying to do. See, it's not about just moving pieces around. It's about achieving three fundamental goals. Let's call them the three golden rules of chess openings. So every single good opening, I don't care if it's the Ruy López or the Sicilian Defense, it's all built on these same core principles. Number 1, control the center of the board. Number 2, get your pieces into the game fast. We're talking your knights and bishops. And number 3, keep your king safe, which almost always means castling. These are just moves to memorize. These are the ideas that give the moves their power. All right, now that we've got that foundation down, we can finally take on the big myth. This idea that there's one single best opening just completely falls apart the second you realize that its power depends entirely on the context of the game. First off, let's talk about skill level. An opening that's an absolute killer weapon for one player might be a total liability for another. You want to see a perfect example? Let's talk about the super aggressive romantic King's Gambit. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. If you look at the data from Lichess, the King's Gambit works best in that intermediate ELO range. That's just a rating system in chess. So why is that? Well, it's because those players are sharp enough to handle the wild, tactical positions it creates, but their opponents usually aren't ready to defend against it perfectly. For beginners, it's just way too complicated, and for masters who've studied it inside and out, they know it's a bit shaky. And this quote from a player on Reddit just illustrates the trade-off perfectly. The King's Gambit is always fun, always playable, especially in fast online games. But here's the catch. As white, you technically start the game with a tiny advantage, and this opening pretty much throws that away for a chaotic, messy game. It's a choice you have to make. The second piece of this puzzle is, well, it's you, your own personal playing style. Are you someone who likes to slowly build up pressure, a calm positional player, or are you a tactical brawler who just loves chaos? Believe it or not, openings have personalities, and you've got to find one that clicks with yours. Let's look at a classic matchup, the Caro-Kann versus the French defense. Both are super common ways to respond to white's first move, e4. The Caro-Kann is just rock solid. Its whole idea is to get this one bishop out into the open before its own pawns can trap it. The French, on the other hand, is much more dynamic. It often traps that exact same bishop, creating a long-term problem for yourself, but in exchange, you get some immediate, sharp counterattacking chances. And honestly, this quote just sums it up perfectly. There is no right or wrong answer here. It's all about a strategic choice. Do you want the safe, reliable Caro-Kann, or do you want the complex, double-edged sword that is the French? It really just depends on your personality. So what happens when you get to the very top level? For grandmasters, choosing an opening becomes this incredibly deep psychological battle of preparation and trying to outthink your opponent before the first piece is even moved. You see, top players don't just play everything. They build something called an opening repertoire. It's like their curated set of deeply studied, secret weapons that perfectly fit their style. It's their toolkit for every tournament. And this brings us to a really fascinating trend that's happening right now. For decades, the Ruy López was considered the absolute gold standard for white. But lately, top players are all about the Italian game, an opening that used to be considered kind of quiet and boring for top-level chess. So what gives? Why the big change? It all comes down to a very practical meta-game choice. The best response to the Ruy López became the Berlin defense, a line that's so solid and so heavily analyzed by computers that it almost always leads to a draw. It's known as the Berlin Wall. So by playing the Italian game, White cleverly sidesteps all that theory, avoids the Berlin Wall, and basically says to their opponent, all right, let's just play chess, forcing a game that's way less predictable.
So we've busted the myth. We know the best opening doesn't exist. The right choice depends on your skill, your style, and even what your opponent knows. So the big question is, how do you actually get started? Don't worry, here is a simple, practical path forward.
First, don't try to learn everything at once. Just pick 1 or 2 openings for white and 1 or 2 for black. That's it. Next, and this is the most important part, don't just memorize moves. Focus on understanding the plans behind them. What is each side trying to do? And finally, just play. Try them out, see what kind of games you get into, and most importantly, find out what you actually enjoy playing. Because in the end, your first move isn't just some technical decision. It's the first word in the story you're about to write on that board. It's an expression of your style, your ambition, and your unique understanding of the game. So, the board is set. Your opponent is waiting. What story will your first move tell?